And hello, everybody. This is, of course, episode 2 of My Libertarian Conscience, and I'm Thomas. Last week, I kind of went back and forth of sorts, rambled a little bit, explaining who I was briefly and how I evolved to libertarianism. Lots of things led me to that point. And in a sense, I'm still evolving to this day. So, um, you know, bear with me. Today, you know, let me back up a little bit. Um, Last week, Gary Johnson, William Weld, they were on CNN. They got placed in front of a fairly significant audience, at least in cable TV newsland. They were on prime time, kind of the middle of the week, and they got to do the whole CNN town hall, which was an opportunity to show everybody this is who these two people are. And before I get into the episode, what it's going to be about, on the one hand, it looked like two candidates not quite on the same page, but on the other hand, it looked like two candidates who were allowed to be human beings and allowed to show people that they're not carbon copies of each other and they don't have to be just to run for president and vice president. They can have their own points of view on some things, and that can actually be beneficial as a way of checks and balances. And with what's happening in the world today and what happened last week, more polls are coming out, and Johnson is still somewhat in double digits, not quite 15%, which is required to be included in the presidential debates. But significant progress nonetheless. At some point, people are going to ask, okay, you say you're libertarian, but what does it really mean? Because the one thing you're going to notice is there's a wing of the Libertarian Party that's, let's just say, either academically inclined or place a great big emphasis on academic style debate, which is understandable. But not everybody identifies with each other with that style of communication. So today, I'm going to help out with explaining in a nutshell what it is. There's going to be lots of nuances, debates on like things that may appear to be significantly small or insignificant from an outsider's perspective. This is basically big picture stuff. It's not getting into a whole lot of detail, but helping those who are new to the idea to understand, okay, this is pretty much what it is. And there's a lot of debate about various things in between. And that's not the focus today. So, when we ask, what does it mean to be libertarian? And there's been debates on, does it mean fiscal conservative, social liberal? When you're talking about being inside of government, yes. But there's context that applies outside of government. So it depends on the situation. So bear with me. I created a nice little outline so glad. I'm so glad I have multiple monitors set up, because that's going to help. So, if you look up libertarian in the dictionary, you're going to notice a phrase, free will. And that's what it emphasizes. Freedom of will. So, we side on individual choices so long as those choices do not hurt anybody else. And what do I mean? What are, freedom of will? What are our main freedoms regarding our choices in life and everything else? Well, life, liberty, property. So those are the main freedoms, and it's believed that these come before any form of government, that we're born with these. It's kind of sounding familiar, right? So government is supposed, in the, camp of those who want to optimize government, eliminate bureaucratic waste. The idea is government should only act as referee, making sure everybody's respecting each other's rights. And the big thing is that the freedoms come before government, and interactions with individuals should be on a voluntary basis, not forced. Now, with those freedoms comes, a certain amount of empowerment, but it also comes with responsibility. And if you shirk those responsibilities, you abuse those freedoms, you have to face consequences for your choices. So, for example, you don't murder, lie, cheat, steal more, because you could face retribution from others. And the big tenet of what it means to be a libertarian is something called the non-aggression principle. And before anybody says, okay, you're talking pacifism, not quite. Give you an example. Let's say I run up to somebody and smack them in the back of the head for no apparent reason. They didn't do anything to me. I did it unprovoked. Can they drop me where I stand? Non-aggression principle? Absolutely. Pacifism emphasizes turning the other cheek. Violence is not the answer. Non-aggression principle argues something a little bit differently. It's saying violence is a solution, just not the solution. In other words, last resort, self-defense, if you're attacked, unprovoked. That is pretty much it in a nutshell. So, in the case of force, fraud, and coercion, if you're attacked without provoking, if you're attacked without provocation, you can retaliate. Now, of course, the NAP is supposed to be used within reason. Like most any philosophies out there, you're going to have extremes. And libertarianism.org has an excellent essay on, that it argues for the rejection of that principle. I just use their talking points as a way of explaining why it's important to use the phrase within reason. Because context matters. Not every situation's the same. And we have to factor in malicious intent as well. So using any form of, let's say, power, force, it should be used as a last resort, not the first. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what libertarianism is. So if somebody tries to steal my wallet, I can try to go get it back. If some person runs up and kicks me in the balls, it may take me a while, but I'm within my rights to go after them for doing that. If somebody forges a name, the person whose identity was stolen is within their rights to try to get that situation rectified. And so that is, right there is non-aggression principle. So there's a lot of freedom. You hear the phrase, I want gay married couples to be able to defend their marijuana plants with guns. A mixture of all sorts of pluralism right there. And that's the big emphasis, is pluralism. Now, it's not some big rigid hierarchy where everybody's going to be on the same page. And that's because we value the individual. Going back to the two candidates for president and vice president, why weren't they quite on the same page? Because they're two different individuals. They're going to have two different perspectives, which may be a good thing, because one can keep the other in check and say, hold up there, that's a bit much. Can we tone it down a little bit? Or the other could say, hey, that sounds great, but we need to go a little bit further. So individualism is valued. Now, that doesn't mean you have to like or agree with it. Those who don't like certain lifestyle choices, the simple solution to that, instead of banning it or restricting it, don't engage in it. Don't participate in that lifestyle choice. It's that simple. So there could be a libertarian that doesn't follow or practice religion. They just don't go to church. They don't try to prevent others from going to church. I, myself, even though I've defended the Second Amendment and still will to this very day until the day I die, despite all of that, I do not own guns. And there's a chance I may never own a gun for the rest of my life. But here's the difference. That's my choice. And I refuse to impose that choice upon other people. Individualism is valued more than anything. And that, in a nutshell, is what libertarianism is. You can do what you wish. You can live your life as you see fit, so long as you do not hurt anybody else. You can hurt yourself. Hopefully you learn from your mistakes. Hopefully you don't stick your finger in the light socket multiple times just to get that funny feeling one more time. Hopefully you don't continuously throw styrofoam in the microwave just to see what happens, right? It's the hope that you don't do something that's stupid and that causes you harm. But if you're not hurting anybody else, more power to you. So that's, in life, that's pretty much what it entails. Now, some would call it live and let live. That's another way of looking at it. So there's the context of life, and in the context of government, where you are in a governmental position, elected position. It could be any branch of government. fiscally conservative, socially liberal. Not spending any more of other people's money than necessary to get the job done, while not using your position to force people to live their lives a certain way. So one could be all for cutting corporate welfare, for example, while not caring who marries whom. That would be a good example. One could not attempt to rush to war with another country without including Congress in the decision-making process, because even with any form of outsourcing, actually especially with outsourcing on that, it gets expensive, which can straddle the country with significant debt. They can avoid wars while letting others speak their mind, even if it's something that not everybody's going to agree with. It's in terms of governance, at the very least, it's preferably minimalistic as possible. Because the more complex an apparatus is, the more entangling, intermingling laws become. Look at what happened with the European Union and the referendum regarding the UK possibly exiting the EU. Lots of commingling laws have pretty much mucked everything up. So if the UK does formally decide, okay, we're going to follow the will of the people and just leave, there's a lot of knots to untangle there. There were benefits on the surface of freedom of travel and, supposedly easier trade between European countries. But there were limits and restrictions too, and there were intertwining laws, rules, regulations that there's a reason they put the 2 years of negotiations in for exiting. And it may take longer than that if it happens at all. So it recognizes what happens when you have too many cooks spoiling the stew. So that's pretty much, it's on the surface, it's not hard. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't interfere with my life. I have to extend that same, those same rights to you. You can associate with whomever you want, so long as you're not interfering with other people's rights. And again, there are things that we have to take into account. We have to consider every situation. That's why the non-aggression principle is just one portion of it. The idea is you don't screw other people over. And so hopefully that kind of helped you out with what libertarianism is. You don't be a bully to others. You don't hurt other people. And you live your life as you see fit. Libertarians abhor federal programs on a national level because they recognize that in the end, it'll cost everybody more money. The more you subsidize something, the more of it you get. Hence the fear of bubbles for secondary education. There was that housing bubble not too long ago. not so long ago. And now we're running into uncertainty across the Atlantic Ocean. So who knows? But that's the whole point of what it means to be libertarian. Let people live their lives and take responsibility for their lives. This doesn't mean you can't help other people voluntarily. We're not to be confused with, say, objectivism. A lot of people say Ayn Rand was a libertarian. Not quite. Objectivists, there's a lot of economic outlook overlap in terms of we shouldn't ask the government for permission to do this, that, or the other thing. But there's also the idea of libertarians not having a problem with altruism as long as it's not forced. And that's a big difference too. So you can absolutely help a lot of people. You can donate money to causes that you support. You can donate items to various charities. You absolutely should not be forced to do it at the barrel of a gun, so to speak. And again, emphasis on voluntary interaction, not forced interaction. Because the more you try to force bigots to work together, the more of a backlash you're going to get. And the best way to deal with bigotry and other issues is to do it yourself by teaching the next generation to treat each other better than the last generation treated each other, so on and so forth. And yeah, it's going to be harder to do it that way, but it's the best way, because once people transition to a new paradigm, it sticks with them for a while. So the idea behind libertarianism, again, is freedom of choice. The non-aggression principle. Government as a last resort, not the first. So with any issue that may pop up that's hot button, ask yourself, can we solve this without the government and getting involved? Can we solve this? And you may be surprised at how often you may find yourself saying, yeah, we might be able to. So there you have it. That's all I have for you today. Some of it a little bit rambly, but not as much. I kind of organized it a little bit more. When the video on YouTube's published, I'll go ahead and throw some links in there to kind of get you started and looking stuff. And hopefully each episode I'll be able to just throw some more links in and for everybody to look at. Feel free to visit my website, thomasholbrook.com. There you can read my blogs. I post on a semi-regular basis, and as the election year kind of progresses forward, I'll keep doing that more frequently. And I'm also on Facebook as well. Feel free to follow me. Just search for My Libertarian Conscience. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you all next time, and I should have a more definitive schedule. So those of you who are on YouTube, who are seeing this through YouTube, Google+, and through a link I shared on Facebook, feel free to share this everywhere you can. And feel free to follow me on Google+, like my fan page on Facebook. And click the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and feel free to share this with everybody else, because this is going to show up on the YouTube channel before it shows up on the podcast feed. and everything else. So I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.